Okay, welcome everybody. So this is an Eclipse gathering that I felt called to call together with these beautiful people who are each good friends and colleagues, and I love and appreciate each of them and each of you. And so today we have Jonathan Coe, Jordyn Smith, Verena Borell, and Michelle Dench, and me, Martha Hines. And we're going to be diving into the upcoming eclipse season, which is happening in October 2023. There's going to be two eclipses, one on October 14th, one on October 28th, and Jonathan is going to go into more detail about what those are. But welcome to everybody here live and everybody watching the recording. Really appreciate you being here. And if you want to put in the chat where you are in the world, feel free to do that. And yeah, we're gonna dive in. So Jonathan, start us out.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for being here. So Martha asked me if we could all arrive together with a little bit of an exercise meditation. So let's do that. I invite all of us to start with a little bit of movement. Maybe if you are feeling more comfortable, camera off for this little portion. This is going to last 2-3 minutes. I welcome you to do that. Maybe bringing in a little bit of stretch to your body. I don't know about you, but for me, I always notice whenever I'm on screen or whenever I'm in a digital space with a lot of other people from all over the place, I feel it in my body. So if that's also you, just acknowledging that sensation wherever you may feel that in your body. And also, if you don't feel like tuning into your physical body at the moment, I welcome you to tune into your awareness in your space, not in your immediate physical body. So know that you always have an option to kind of zoom in and out of this experience. And noticing either your breath or the air around you. And placing your attention on the fact that we are all meeting today on September 26th, if you are in the US, or if you're in a different part of the world, maybe it's another day. Simply bring awareness to how your body, how your physical being also exists within a time-space continuum. Notice the place that you find yourself in. Maybe giving thanks to the land or to the house or this building, the structure that you find yourself in. And begin noticing how you are in the middle. You are in between the earth and the cosmos. And allowing yourself to take the space that feels right to you at this moment. Perhaps you notice yourself a little small or a little too large. And simply allow your awareness to bring you to the size that feels right to you at this moment. Notice your hands and allow your hand to rest in a part of your body or somewhere in your environment, maybe your desk, or the chair you're sitting in, and allowing those hands to settle. And as you feel ready, beginning to maybe give yourself some gentle touch and gently fluttering your eyes open if you have them closed. Welcome.
I say something I'm realizing as I'm dropping into myself, I wanted to say in the beginning.
Yeah, go for it, Martha.
Which is my real intention with this panel, with this time together, is that as I was saying before we came on, I personally am finding it much harder than usual in my own life to stay really centered and grounded right now. And I think, I mean, as I've said on various videos, these eclipses are for me my exact to the minute nodal opposition with Pluto squaring the node. So I think for me personally, it makes sense that I'm having a harder than usual time staying centered and all of that. But I think lots of us maybe are feeling that in various ways. And so my real hope and intention with our time together is that it be a source of helping each of us to ground, align, come, back into what really actually serves us and supports us, so we can feel nurtured and supported in our highest, coming back into our highest good. And yeah, I want this to be a healing time. That's really the ultimate point. So back to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Martha. I love that. I think that's a beautiful segue into the topic today, which is we're going to be talking about the upcoming eclipse season, and there are two lunations we're going to be discussing. And before we get into that and the specifics and the nitty-gritty of those particular lunations, I kind of want to open up space for this panel to maybe touch on briefly some of what's alive for us with regards to eclipses. And Verena, right before we began this talk, you had brought up a really interesting point, which I've also noticed in the collective, which is conversations around eclipses tend to bring a little bit of constriction. Like there's this energy of like, what's going to happen? Fear, I think, is a theme that a lot of people approach the eclipse with. And so, I've been thinking about how that's kind of akin to the new year, right? When we think about the Gregorian New Year, January 1st, there's so much energy placed on beginning, starting anew, that it almost is like creating this energetic traffic jam, right? And I think eclipses have a similar energy to me. And some of it is certainly rooted in the astrology, but it also feels like the collective thought pattern kind of speaks to that and impacts that a little bit. So I'm curious if any of you have any thoughts around that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe because I brought it up before we started the recording button. I just had these discussions with some people in my audience and my clients that there are these fears around the eclipses, especially because the last eclipse seasons in Taurus and Scorpio have been literally for many people, life and death experiences. So how I experience eclipses independent from the signs in which they are happen. I think, and it's not my idea, I know that's a common sentence, that eclipses are catalysts for transformation. And I think that when we are in eclipse season, for me personally, it feels often like time and space are actually functioning in a very different way. So time can run, or you can have the experience that time slows down and portals are opening, often surprisingly and joyfully, and chapters are closing. Maybe joyfully too or not. So I think what makes maybe people scared about eclipses is that it is very much that you have the feeling of losing control and transformation happening in an intensity. And I think our system, our soma, our nervous system does not want change. Change is scary for our nervous system. So I think because of that, because transformation is happening during eclipses on a more intense level than maybe in other seasons of time, it can be challenging for us to stay grounded because our system is on alert, even though maybe our mind knows, okay, it's all for my evolutionary path and growing process, but my system is on alert because what is happening? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I could jump in also. I had been reflecting on this because someone mentioned to me the other day about how ancient astrologers used to seem like magicians because they would know that these things would be happening, and that freaked out the common people who didn't, understand. And when you were mentioning, Verena, the fear and the real cause of our fear is always uncertainty, whether it's rooted in insecurity or fear of loss, fear of, any form of fear. It's the feeling that I don't know what is going to happen to me or in my life. And I've been trying to really hold the power of the eclipse portal in the way that I see evolution. Like just from a astrological perspective, the nodes of the moon are the points in space that create the phenomenon of eclipses. And when a lunation happens, a sun-moon conjunction, a new moon, or a full moon, a sun-moon opposition, on or near the lunar nodes, these points in space, that is, creating the eclipse window. And even knowing that from an evolutionary perspective, those points in our natal chart point to the core trajectory of our evolution, then can help us to remember, oh, this is really the window of my own evolution opening to me. And as somebody who's given birth to 2 children on eclipses, both my son, my first child, was born within a few hours of a full moon Libra eclipse. He has the Aries sun or the Aries moon and the Libra sun. And my daughter was born near a Capricorn new moon eclipse. And so these children transformed me. I was the portal through which they were birthed. A soul was born into the world. And so it's a constant reminder for me that these seasons are the times upon which our souls are born and reborn into the world, which is another reason why often souls do leave the earth during these times, or we can have experiences of great change or loss or transformation. But it's because at a very deep and core level, we are opening to the next form of evolution within our own lives. And this can be very mundane. It can be like moving to a new house, or receiving a call from a friend, or having a conversation that reconciles something, or something in our life being triggered that is a catalyst for both a very near-term change, right? We're talking about a lunation cycle, full moon, new moon. These are 30-day, 6-month cycles, but the lunar nodes follow an 18-month cycle through a sign, and then they follow an 18-year, 19-year full term cycle. So Martha, what you're talking about in your experience of having the reversal is the midpoint, the halfway journey. And so we just know, we can know in the safety of how we don't know when we're going to be born, and we don't know when we're going to die. We can know how deeply we're held in this portal, and that all things are happening for our own and for the collective soul evolution. So
that's beautiful. I love it. But it makes me think of what Verena, how do I want to articulate this? As my internet wants to be unstable right now, sorry guys, is you know, they are known as like portals, but what I think is so beautiful about it is it's the past and the future intersecting with the present moment.
mm-hmm.
So there are things that we can be or feel really scared about, but on a soul level, right? I think oftentimes for me, I can kind of feel like this, whenever something I feel like is running stagnant in my life, this is kind of how eclipses feel to me. It's like, I'm doing all of this work, and then things are just, you know, I feel like, oh, I'm swimming in the ocean and I'm not being tumbled around, right? But then like it smells like rain in the ocean, and you know, it evokes something, and then all of a sudden you're being tumbled around, right? And it's on a soul level, like we understand that there is a catalyst about to happen, that the past prior life dynamics or early development or whatever is circling back around, and really we're more prepared than we think that we are. Our mind, like our logic, wants to tell us like, you're not ready for this. But I think during these times, these are fated events for some of us, you know, especially if something is hitting your own natal chart, like you, Martha, right now, you know, this is happening during, you know, your nodal opposition. But these are things that if one of these eclipses is hitting your own natal chart and aspecting it, there is something about resting and knowing that you are prepared more than you think that you are for this event. Because this was before you were a twinkle in the eye to your parents, right? Like you chose the dynamic wanting to serve as a catalyst. And I tell this to my clients so much, even when they have a really difficult transit happening, is that before you came here and you took your first breath, when the sky was illuminated and that's your natal chart, your soul design, your fingerprint in this lifetime, that I love to like think, maybe it's all my Capricorn, but I love to think of like my soul as an inner child, almost like being like this, I mean, me here being an inner child and my soul being like this warm grandmother who's like, no, you had this in you before you even came here. This is why we're choosing to do this as one. And so there can be an intensity within the nervous system, I think, Verena, like you talked about, because the soul knows something's about to happen. Something about the past is colliding in the present moment. And to really honor the fact that we are a lot stronger than we give ourselves credit for, and that we are choosing whatever is coming up as a catalyst, because before we took our first breath, we knew that we could have the ability to do this, and we wanted to give ourselves a chance to do it. And so that's something that I reflect on a lot, eclipses, or even when I have my own, I've had Pluto squaring my moon, sitting on my Mercury, like these major transits. I had a child during a nodal opposition, these are things that are fated. And it's because we know that it's something that's going to help with our evolution. And there's something about, to me, that I feel very comforted about that whenever I feel like, oh my gosh, is crisis about to happen, or whatever. It's like, no, before I came into this incarnation, I prepared myself for this. I know that I have it in me to do this, and that all I have to do, true Virgo like action, I'm going to tie that in because that's such a big Venus in both of these charts, is we can take it step by step and we don't have to have it all figured out. And there's something very comforting in that. So that is my take on this.
I love that. I love that, all three of you. Martha, you want to add something to that?
What I can add is, and this maybe gets into maybe where you want to go next with kind of the configuration of what's actually happening in the sky. But what's coming to me as you're talking is not only are we having eclipses, we're having eclipses with Pluto squaring the nodes. And another element that I've been personally really tuning into pretty deeply is the fact that Pluto is also in trining Sedna, as they are both going back and forth between signs, right? So Pluto is currently retrograde in Capricorn, but going between Capricorn and Aquarius, and Sedna is going between Taurus and Gemini. And so they're in this long-term trine with each other. So there's so many elements of radical letting go for everybody, I feel like. And something that I've personally been feeling really strongly is a letting go that's deeper than I think I've ever done, certainly in this lifetime, but maybe in all of my lifetimes. And I feel like it's a collective thing as well, that there's this moment right now where we can be letting go on a karmic level that's so deep and so powerful that we haven't, that's what we're here to do. That's what I'm feeling in myself. And what I get shown and told in my prayers. And it sounds cliche, and it is cliche, but it's also so true. What I also keep getting told in my prayers, including this morning, is we have to let go of the old to come to the new, right? We know that. And I know that. And yet I've been noticing, even in myself, again, even just this morning, I was feeling really attached to certain things coming up for me this fall, like certain that I feel like there's this amazing opportunity I have to do blah, blah, blah. And okay, I'm ready. I'm willing to let go, but I don't want to let go of that. Right. Mm. So it's like that. And yet I was getting shown, even in my prayers, this is interesting, but this image of the water going down the toilet. Mm. So it was like the spirits were saying to me, just let it go, let it all go. It's all okay. And because there's one thing that's always stable, which is the divine, right? And so that's something maybe we could come back to later. But when we're in the midst of so much change, I think it is helpful to remember what we can count on, which for me is the reality that we are source. But yes. Verena, were you about to say something?
And the only constant is change.
That too.
I would love to add one thought before we maybe dive deeper into the eclipse charts. So in general, I think it's very important that we don't forget that eclipses or transits in general always reflect a field of different opportunities and possibilities. And we have free will to choose how we want to interact with these energies. So that's really important for me to say here, so that nobody who watches it thinks, okay, now the eclipses, that means that this and this will happen. No, these are all archetypal. We can just predict something in an archetypal way. So we can just see that certain topics and themes who are multifaceted and multivalent are in the field. But our individual soul and our free will, we are here, we can interact with these energies. So we are not doomed to experience certain things, and we here in this panel discussion, and I would say nobody can predict what exactly will happen. So I just want to bring this thought in, that it's really about gaining consciousness, so that everyone who is watching this, everyone here of us, can co-create and interact with the upcoming energies more consciously and more constructive, rather than feeling like being a victim of the eclipses. So yeah, I think that's really important.
You make a really, really important point with that, because of the energetic of the Venus square Uranus, even preparing us for that. The opportunity right now for us to respond differently than our conditioning is actually the gift. We can have, responded to circumstances in our life. It's like the old saying, being sick and tired of being sick and tired, that one day you just all of a sudden wake up and make the choice with your will to do something completely differently, comes as almost a form of grace, in the same way that an eclipse happens, that energetic of, wow, this is the day that I woke up and I chose in my relationship to interact differently, to relate differently. This is the day that I took my power back and I made a decision to do something for myself from my own agency, instead of allowing the past, right? This is all that Pluto square to the nodes. The resolution node is the past, is the south node, but it's about relating to life in a different way, in order to resolve the past, in order to complete cycles that have been going on, beyond this lifetime. So I think I want to emphasize what Verena is saying, because sometimes that's the blessing that we get in these moments of crisis in our lives, is that we finally do make a choice to relate from our agency, with the alignment being to how we actually want to be in our life.
That makes me think of that saying also, like, when the pain outweighs the fear, that's when we choose to make a different choice, right? Because it's literally everything we've been saying. Like, change is scary. It's the unknown. It's, it's going against survival, what we think of survival, because we're thinking that what's known and familiar is secure. But then there comes a chance to make a different choice, and to bet on ourselves, essentially, is how I like to think of it, to be in grace with oneself, to understand that I can't know everything, and to trust in something much larger and take the dive and see how it goes. And I can say on a personal level, and I think that this is kind of universal, from friends, clients, family members, whenever there's that threshold that gets met during transits or eclipses, that when someone takes that leap of faith, it helps them to learn how to trust themselves. But deeper than that, it teaches them how to trust spirit and how they're being directed to take the leap of faith, even if it's not tangible right then and there. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, and just one last mini thought about eclipses. I think it's so interesting that when we really think about it, it's sitting in the dark. So here comes maybe this collective fear too, that in ancient times, I mean, a solar eclipse, the sun was dark in the middle of the day. A lunar eclipse, the moon was dark in the middle of the night when the full moon was there a minute ago. So it's kind of, it has something that we feel, oh wow, we see that we are part of bigger things going on. And I think that in evolutionary astrology, we connect the moon with our ego, with our personality in this lifetime. So the lunar nodes, the nodes of the moon, are very much about the development of our personality. And so I think eclipses, the word ego death comes into mind, or ego transformation, or ego evolution. So that is always for our human self, not for our soul, but for our human self. It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that, Verena. And it's also reminding me how seeds grow in the dark, right? The fear of the dark is very human, but also the dark is where seeds can grow. You know, things don't grow from the light, they grow from the dark. So yeah. How do you all feel about go for it, Jordyn.
Michelle, something, I feel like it was last eclipse season we talked or something, and this is making me think of it as well. Michelle, you said something about you felt like these eclipses being booked in is like a door shut and you're just walking this tunnel like in the dark, and you're like, I don't know where I'm going.
Yeah, I said that at the end of the last cycle.
Yeah,
because
so that kind of reminded me of that.
And Jonathan's gonna give us a tour through the eclipses and the charts, but this particularly the Taurus Scorpio lunation is the last nodal cycle, but the first of this series of eclipses. So it is essentially closing the portal of that nodal cycle. And I even am feeling it now in this full moon in Aries that is coming up this week. It's not technically an eclipse, but it's the first lunation within the sign of the nodes. And it carries the same energetic weight and potency as like a precursor. I talked about it in my week ahead video. But Jonathan, I want to give it back to you.
Yeah. So let's get I'm feeling that we're starting to burst at the seams here, like really ready to get into it. So let's look at the chart. So I'm just gonna give a really quick tour of both the solar as well as the lunar eclipse. And so the first one is this new moon in Libra on October 14th, right? And just really quickly, you know, sun and moon both 21 degree Libra, right? The south node is in Libra as well, pretty close to where the sun and the moon are. And the ruler of both the luminaries, Venus, is in Virgo. And then the other one is on October 28th, where we have the sun in Scorpio, the moon in Taurus, and you know, within about 10 degrees of the nodes. And the ruler of the moon is also Venus in Virgo, and ruler of the sun, depending on traditional or modern rulership, is either Mars in Scorpio, which is domicile in traditional scheme, or Pluto in Capricorn. So Yeah, I guess I'm curious if any of you would also like to add anything that feels kind of major here before we get deeper into the significations. Yeah, is there anything that you all feel should be mentioned here?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Verena.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Verena.
Okay, I just wanted to mention that at the lunar eclipse, we have a grand water trine between Vesta, Saturn, and the Sun. And during the solar eclipse, we have a grand Earth trine. When I saw it correctly, can you? Oh no, sorry, I was wrong. We have already the trine between Vesta and Saturn. Yeah. The grand Earth trine was with the full moon in Aries. Sorry. Yeah. I just wanted to point out this grand water trine. Yeah.
In the lunar eclipse. Yeah. Anything else from Jordyn, or Martha, or Michelle?
Go ahead, Jordyn. I'll follow you.
Okay, cool. What I think is really interesting, I think all of you guys know how much I love planetary nodes in the asteroid Lilith, so I've got to bring them in. I know that they're not up here, but it's really easy. And Jonathan, if you can just point this out, that way people can follow along. So because the lunar south node is in Libra and ruled by Venus, and also the other eclipse, the moon is in Taurus and it's ruled by Libra as well. I mean, by Venus as well. Both are, one's the inner expression, one is the outer expression. But this has been a really powerful time with Pluto squaring the nodes with the resolution. Michelle talked about it a little bit. Looking at that, the emphasis is on that south node, the lunar south node, because it was last conjunct. But because both of these are facilitated by Venus, it's really important that we look at not only Venus, but Venus's nodes. And so during the eclipse on the 14th, there is going to be Venus is going to conjunct its own north node. It's going to be at 6 degrees. So that is really powerful. And then Venus's south node is conjunct Lilith and also the lunar south node. So there's a lot of emphasis on relational dynamics, not just personal or a relationship with self, but pertaining to Gaia, to Earth, to nature, however you want to look at this, and society as a whole. And then on the other eclipse that's in Taurus, Venus is also going to be conjunct her north node again, down to the degree. And then the Venus's south node is going to be at 22 degrees Scorpio and conjunct Ceres. So there's a lot of energy really just reinstating the past, meeting up with the present moment as a catalyst for the future right now regarding these really deep Venusian energies. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, I'm sorry I keep going back and forth, but the south node of Venus, I was wrong about the Libra solar eclipse. It's at 14 degrees Scorpio. That is where the last lunar eclipse happened. So that's it's reflecting really powerful, potent energy of karmic clearing of the past. And to not freak people out, this is actually reinstating that on a collective level, we are really choosing to evolve at a more rapid pace, that we're wanting to get down to the nitty gritty as a way to create more balance and harmony right now. And I can go further into it. I feel like, I can weave that in later, but I found it fascinating and I felt like it was something that we should be talking about. I think that if you have something in your own natal chart right now, that these eclipses are hitting, it's really important to look at your own Venus and to also look at your own Venus's planetary nodes as well.
Thank you,
And
Jordyn.
when we look at Venus, I think it's really important to know that Venus is in Virgo now, but she just started her cycle in Leo. So we are in a Venus and Leo cycle, and Venus is now a brave morning star who just started her journey into the underworld. So I think it's really important to see Venus in Virgo as an expression with the overarching topic of the Venus and Leo cycle, which is fire, which is very much, I think, in tune with the Aries North Node, which, if you ask me, reflects huge topics about the initiation into a new level of authenticity, of self-leadership, of self-sovereignty, of self-trust, of taking up space, allowing ourselves to be authentic within our relationships. And now that Venus is in Virgo at both of these eclipses, for me, it reflects so strongly that it's really about, or the one important topic for me for both of these, for this whole eclipse season now, is really to, stay focused and stay self-centered and in your own self-sovereignty while you are in relationships. So how can you be your full expression, your authentic self within relationship? And how can you release all patterns around fulfilling the expectations of others, sticking to outdated rules and roles, how you think you should be, this idea around, or this trauma response around fawning, people pleasing. How can you gain more self-trust, more authenticity, and really step into what you are and what you are here for, and gain a new level of self-leadership? And that comes with fears, that comes with fear of losing attachment. So Gabor Mate says always we choose attachment over authenticity when we are not aware of that. So I think that this is a huge topic, and I even reflected on these eclipse season now in autumn, coming after Virgo season. So it, for me, feels really like relationships, or going into relationships from the Virgo point of view, being whole unto yourself. So how can I be whole unto myself and consciously relate? And then the following eclipse season will come after Pisces. And I have the feeling that there the focus might be more about coming from the oneness into the individual self-expression. But for me, I feel so strongly at the moment all of these topics around how can I allow myself to take up the space that is naturally my space? How can I allow myself to be more authentic within my relationships? And it feels really like a new level that we are reaching. And I stop here.
Yeah, I want to add something to that, Verena, because as you were speaking, I was thinking about Saturn, and of course, Saturn is right opposite from Venus here. And Saturn in Pisces to me has really shown how when we say no to something or when we reject something, it actually can open up space for new dreams, right? So I was recently contemplating on something that Diana Rose Harper had said in one of her lectures about rejection as liberation, about how for a lot of us, our experience of no is colored through being the recipient of no as a child, right? And how we often feel that restriction of our innate and inherent kind of enthusiasm for life when our parents told us not to do something, and how as an adult, actually no is agential, right? And no creates space for more. Saying no is a creative act, right? When you say no to something, it opens up space for you to create what you do want to say yes to. And what you were sharing, Verena, really reminds me of that. I think you also had something to share, Michelle, that I probably interjected before you had
It's
a
such a
chance.
beautiful reflection. I'm a very Saturn ruled person. So I respect that. You can't even understand how incredibly profound that is to hear. So thank you for that piece. And I think like we can't speak to Venus and Virgo without attuning to her ruler also, her relational. So it's so funny, all these astrologers together, and we each have our unique perspective, which I think is so beautiful. I'm very aware that Venus's resolution node, as Verena was pointing to in what she was saying, is the North Node. That's the node that she last conjoined to. And that in this time, as she's moving during these eclipses, in Virgo, she is relating to Mercury. And if we follow Mercury through the eclipses, Mercury is in front of the sun and the moon for this new moon eclipse. And then the path of Mercury is through the Gazhimi, the conjunction with the sun, through the south node into Scorpio to the other side of the sun at the full moon eclipse. So we literally are watching the messenger of Venus, the agent of Venus, the relational, go through the path, what they call in ancient astrology, the via combusta, the path of fire, the path of initiation, and be so directly connected to the whole eclipse process that I can't ignore that or not give attention. Mercury is the agent of change in this. And what does Mercury represent? Mercury represents communication. Mercury represents messages. So much of what we might be facing in this time is the resolution of the messages that we have received from the past. And so, Jonathan, where you're saying like, oh, this reframe of Saturn and what no meant when I was a child, I can't do that. You don't have permission. And Saturn often speaks to limitations that we feel or places where we feel constricted. In this case, no being offered as a liberation. I've heard the phrase, rejection is God's protection. And I really have been trying to internalize that in core relational dynamics where I've experienced, and I'll just, be vulnerable. And this deep rejection that I've experienced over the last several years has constantly come back in my face as an opportunity to heal something that is so core to my soul that it's not the relationship or the experience or even the circumstance. It's not even maybe my childhood conditioning. Maybe it's something deeper than that and more ancient than that. But the sense of what we're all longing for belonging, longing for connection, but this learning or relearning how we do that in truth, in authenticity from ourselves, from a place where we're not bringing the past into what we're experiencing in the present. Like that is the place. And this has been one of the things in my own life that I haven't figured out how to heal. But when you offered the reflection that no could be an opening, a liberation, and in a way, it's like what we say no to in our lives. If you're like, I'm not available for that. No, I can't help you with that. And, Virgo being that discernment and the ability to set boundaries and to be clear and define what it is that I desire in my life and how do I align my life with that, then all of the things from the past where we might have internalized no as a source of shame or rejection or alienation could become a place of deeper healing and self-agency and empowerment to say, then what do I really say yes to in my life? And have I been able to create the space for that? So anyways, Jonathan, what you shared was a blessing. And I'm following Mercury in all of this because I feel like the messages that we receive during these times, the words that we speak, the thoughts that emerge, the letters or rehashings of the past are here for a very holy purpose, for us to be able to discern, what do I do with this now? And and Virgo often, I think, reminds me of like purification or the process of correction. I've just been through the High Holy Days in the Jewish tradition, which ended yesterday. And it's a process of like clearing the slate so that we can begin a new year. But we're essentially clearing the slate so that we can begin a new lifetime as souls. And that's a big undertaking from an evolutionary perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that so much, Michelle. And I also, as you were speaking, I'm thinking about something that I think Verena and I have probably spoken about in one of our conversations that we share in both our channels, Verena. But it's making me think about the particular flavor of the kind of shifts, evolutions that happen when the nodes were in Taurus, Scorpio, and how it's similar and how it's different to now the nodes being in Libra and Aries, because both signs or both sets of signs are traditionally ruled by Venus, Mars. But to me, the flavor of them, the particular vibes are very, very different, because the Taurus Scorpio can feel more like an excavation, can feel like something that we're kind of we need to go into the surgery room to kind of bring it out. But Aries Libra feel to me like right in your face. It's like the difference between watching a psychological thriller versus like an action movie, right? And there's something about the themes that are coming up and the ways that they are coming up in this particular eclipse season that feel to me very kind of in your face. And it makes a lot of sense to bring it back to something you were saying at the very start, Martha, about this feeling of not really being grounded. It makes a lot of sense in the context of this Aries Libra, because to me, we are working with that which is in action, right? That which is currently moving, and there's opportunity to kind of work with it in real and feeling like we kind of have to go back and excavate. But that's just my own personal sense. I'm curious if any of you have a response to that.
I do. I'm like chomping at the bits. So will you go back to the solar eclipse? Because this is just you, literally all of you guys are, I love whenever our minds get together. It's just so much fun for me. So if you think about what you're saying, it's really good to mention that prior 18 months before this nodal reverse, and also the last eclipses we had, they were in that Scorpio Taurus dynamic, and the North Node was ruled by Venus. During this particular eclipse now, the solar eclipse at 14 degrees, which was the last lunar eclipse, right? The South Node of Venus is there. So this is really like an emphasis on everything that we were doing, this soul searching. Now it's like coming to the forefront. And if you think of Libra, it's like through Virgo, there's the transition, and then it's Libra, and you are able to put things into action with others. So we were working on all of this stuff on a very personal, deep level, old traumas, old psychological, emotional conditioning. we're still working on it, right? Pluto's still squaring this, but now we're practicing it in the practical, objective way. That is what this is really speaking to me about. Of, hey, how do I take everything that I've been working on in the inside and now put it out there in a Libra type of way? But Michelle, also you pointing out how this Venus is ruled by Mercury is something I've been thinking about. And it is about messages, but it's also about what we talked about in the beginning, choices. It's about these choices that are coming up. And with Venus and Virgo conjunct her own North Node during both of these, this is a huge opportunity to really understand where conditioning, right? Pluto squaring these nodes has played a role in our attachment styles, in our ways that we do partnership with others, how we value, what we need. And there's this opportunity between, in true Virgo fashion, to have like a purging process through making new choices. But new choices, it's the irony of it is through a new choice, we create an action, and that action creates a counteraction. And in true Virgo fashion, from that counteraction, we get to learn more, right? Venus and Virgo, about what it is that we're supposed to be implementing as a way to be interdependent and to have self-sufficiency right now, because we were working on that the last eclipse season. And now's the opportunity to dot I's and cross T's, and to know that it's not going to be perfect. It's through choice making. And that you might, Virgo, I think for me, and what I see with people with a lot of Virgo, is that it can feel exhausting. Like, why the hell is this coming back around? Why am I dealing with this again? Why? Because it's wanting to be purged and purified. And so when we make a new choice, it might not be perfect. So we can get confronted with this kind of Virgo dynamic of, which goes back to our conditioning. How many of us are conditioned that things are supposed to be okay the first time we do it? And then we feel like, very Capricornian, it's all null and void now. Like, I've got to start all over again. And that is just not the case with these eclipses. There's like this big lesson in, in evolutionary astrology, Virgo is about the value is in the effort, not necessarily the outcome. It's like, are you going to grab yourself up by your bootstraps? Maybe you made a crappy choice, but guess what? New information comes in from that. And you have the counteraction of that to now make another new choice. And so then the next eclipse comes, and it's this lunar eclipse that is about how not only to be self-sufficient, to put that into place on an ever deeper level, but it's also, Lilith at the time is going to be opposing that moon. And I love the asteroid Lilith. I think Michelle probably knows this more than anyone, how much I have a love for her, because it is about returning to this state of soul-centeredness. And Lilith is going to be at 1 degree Scorpio, opposing that moon during the, lunar eclipse that's happening after this one. And am I right? Hold on. Yeah, on the 28th. And to me, what that speaks to is throwing off old survival mechanisms that have been conditioned, that are not in resonance with us on a natural level. Right now, there's like a collective reckoning of us sloughing away all of this social, cultural, religious conditioning that has impeded on knowing who we are in the most natural sense, knowing the earth, and how to be in egalitarian relationships with everyone, everything. And with Lilith opposing this moon, and the moon is applying to Jupiter, it's about being authentic and remembering our natural state, who we are, those natural values, who we were when spirit made us before we became conditioned by anything. And Lilith opposing that is like protecting and guarding this. And Lilith at 1 degree Scorpio is really about us understanding on a collective level how to be soul-centered more than anything. That is Lilith in the sign of Scorpio. How do I embody the masculine and feminine? If I'm a man, how do I slough away and rebel against conditioning that says that I'm not allowed to feel a certain way or to be a certain way in a relationship? How, as a woman, do I infuse the masculine in me and know that this has never gone anywhere? It's just been suppressed. And that is Lilith breathing into this whole, eclipse season of there are choices. We're gonna mess up. We're human. It's nature. That is natural law. We're gonna mess up. But there's a path to soul-centeredness through understanding that, and understanding that the value really is in the effort and not the outcome, and that this is not a sprint, it is a marathon. And we are on a very collective level. There's a reason why we've all chosen to be here right now. And it is because we are wanting to establish more balance and harmony right now. Lilith, during the first eclipse, the solar eclipse, is going to be in Libra. And so it's like, a gateway into how do I infuse myself in a natural sense of what the masculine and feminine energies are. How can I nurture something in me and then put it out into the world to be of benefit to others, to be a steward of the world? Like, this is what these eclipses really speak to me. And they start with our deep relational dynamics. We've been working on our relationship with ourselves. Now we're implementing it. The past is coming up, South Node of Libra, in order to make new choices, to learn in a very Virgo-like way of what needs to dissolve and what needs to be learned, really about our humanity. And my favorite thing about Virgo, honestly, is once you learn the lesson, you don't ever have to experience it again. Never. Not in this lifetime, not in another one, not in that same context. It is literally purged and purified. And that is why I think for some people during this time, if you feel like, oh my God, why the F am I going through this again? What is coming up? I am so tired of this. Just know that on a soul level, there are long-standing karmic relational dynamics for yourself and with others, and you are getting to learn about that because you get to purge and purify it. So you don't ever have to deal with it again if you don't want to. If you make the choice to dive deeply, that is what I feel like these eclipses are speaking to, especially with the North Node of Venus conjunct Venus during both of these eclipses, and with Venus facilitating both of these eclipses. It's just very powerful and potent. And for some people, sure, scary things can come up, but also really beautiful and magical things can too. Things that maybe bring the awareness that you didn't have before. And through that awareness, in true Virgo fashion, it is purged. And you don't have to experience it again. And it's faded. This is an opportunity to make these new choices of understanding oneself. And I think with, Venus opposing Saturn, I love what you say. When I was working in mental health, Jonathan, we would always talk about how saying no, having a boundary that's not about control, actually brings security. We can feel insecure when someone pushes against that in true Saturn fashion, right? That anything you can push against is Saturn. But like when someone does that, it gives you information about, now I can make a new choice. Now I have the choice. And so Saturn and Pisces to me reflects a couple of things, especially since it's a power player in this, is one, we're dissolving old man-made constructs revolving around a variety of things, but relational dynamics is emphasized. And two, it's teaching us about only being attached to the truth, not doing Virgo distorted, making an excuse or denying oneself. It is about, I got feedback from the action that I created, and now the only thing I can be attached to is the truth, not the outcome in a distorted Libra form, not in a distorted form of Libra, the expectation, but only the truth of what is occurring. And from there, I can take the necessary Virgo steps one by one to do what it is that I need to do to heal. I feel like I get on a roll.
You're on the soapbox.
Yes.
Thank you, Jordyn.
Martha, I want to hear what you have to say too.
Yeah.
Well, is it okay if we come out of screen share for a second?
Yeah.
Of course.
Thank you. So there we go. I wanted to bring it to something I'm feeling. This brings us back to the Saturn in Pisces and what Jonathan said and how Michelle was feeling in reaction to that. But so for me, a big theme also with these eclipses is, it's Libra and Aries, of course. And when we have that polarity with Aries, especially with the dark goddesses so involved, Verena and I did a whole video just on the goddesses in these eclipses, and welcome to watch that on either of our YouTube channels. But Lilith being one of them, right? There's, with Aries involved and the dark goddesses involved, something that comes up for me is the whole issue of anger and what do we do with that? And how do we navigate when that anger is wisdom? It's true wisdom, and part of the thing that we have the opportunity to do with the nodes being in Libra and Aries is to truly come into a knowing of me, what my needs are, and balance that with being in relationship with others, right? So one of the clues we get sometimes when we're trying to find what do I need is anger. And the dark goddess energy in each of us, all of us, regardless of what our gender identity is, can also come through. I'm thinking of Lilith in particular, for me, can come through with this righteous anger and sacred anger. So I mean, I would love to hear your thoughts on that, but the thing that I hadn't really brought in was what Jonathan, you brought in, which is the Saturn being in Pisces. And then Michelle, what you were saying about the whole relationship with Venus and Mercury and blah, 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 blah. But something about that Saturn being in Pisces, I also had the same reaction you had, Michelle, when Jonathan, you brought that up, is inside of me, I just went, oh, it was like such relief, right? There's something about, yes, like both being on the end of being told no, but for me in my life, it's actually been me, the one saying no a lot. So when I'm getting this message, you need to let go of anything that's not in alignment. Letting go often means telling other people no and telling myself no in certain ways. And that's really hard to do for me. I feel really guilty often, but something about the Saturn being in Pisces, it's like what I'm dropping into right now is this element of it being about forgiving myself, right? Forgiving the other. Like if I need to say no, it's okay. And it's actually in service of the highest good. And similarly, if somebody's telling me no, there can be a Pisces forgiving angle of that, right? Anyway, that's a whole.
Can I tell you a story that really reflects that?
Yeah, let's let Verena and then Michelle and then we'll come back. Yeah.
I just wanted to say something about what you just said, Martha, and what I think Michelle said. This whole thing about Saturn and Pisces and forgiveness and self-forgiveness, I think it's so interesting because Venus during the solar eclipse, Venus is opposed Saturn, and then during the lunar eclipse, Venus is in a applying opposition to Neptune in Pisces. So I think these topics around self-forgiveness, forgiveness, surrendering, feeling that we are all of the time ultimately loved by the divine. No matter what happens in our relationships on a human level, we are loved. And I think that this is, yeah, this is such a, we often hear that, we often say that, but it can be a felt experience, especially during this lunar eclipse in Taurus. And I think that the ultimate support during these Aries Libra topics is that we tune in, Virgo, to feel that we are connected with a love that is actually no earthly love, but divine love. And I think that I cannot help but look at this Vesta trine Saturn during both eclipses. And for me, this in water signs, so Vesta in Cancer, trine Saturn in Pisces. And I think there is so much around what you said around anger and Vesta in Cancer. So Vesta is all about going into relationship and then withdraw and purge and heal and clarify yourself in sacred springs. So the Vesta priestesses who went into sacred sexual connections and then withdraw and regained their virginity in these sacred healing springs. I think there is something around come back to yourself, come back to yourself, come back to yourself. What do you need, Cancer? What are your emotional needs? What wants to be healed inside of you? What do you actually need when you are going into a relationship? Do you repress your needs? Are you ashamed of your needs? Or can you learn to really relate in a way that you don't have to repress your own needs and your own authenticity, Aries, but really, focus and tend to yourself so that you can fully show up in relationships in your most authentic way. And how can we do that? I think we can just do that when we really do our spiritual work, Saturn, Vesta, really do our spiritual practice, whatever that means, just to find some kind of love that is bigger than just the love that we maybe experience at the moment in the here and now. And another thought that I wanted to share is that one big message that I receive from my spirit guides at the moment, which I so much see in this Vesta, Saturn, water energy too, is that they told me you cannot, when we are in a phase of bringing something new into the world. So Aries, a new level of authenticity. We are trying new ways. Venus is in our morning star phase. We are allowing ourselves to show up in a new way, to follow our path, to follow our intuition, our instinct, our heart, to expand. And you cannot birth a baby when you are in a young masculine push energy. They literally said nurturing the new instead of pushing. And I think that's really healing by all of these Aries, Libra, young energy and fiery rush in that we are in, and we think, oh, okay, and now I have to. And I think it's really about slowing down, coming back to yourself, tend to your inner flame, Vesta, keep your temple clean, Virgo, connect with your emotions, slow down, come back to more yin energies, come into a feminine energy so that you can birth yourself, your life, your relationships anew. And it's not about pushing. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I have like eaten a lot of humble pie over the last 2 weeks, you know, and especially Martha, what you were saying about anger at the synagogue last night, the rabbi's message, the core message in between all these there's prayers, lots of prayers, you're praying, it's a day of atonement, right? And then his core message was around anger. And in the space of community, everyone atones for everything. And not that they've done everything, but just that we are all connected and no one person is singled out for, like, I was angry, or I lied, or I did this thing that hurt someone, or I did that thing. Like, it's a collective experience of healing. And I've been really reflecting on, what do we actually do with anger? Because not only, anger may be justified, or it may be indicative. And what Jordyn said in the comments around anger being a secondhand emotion, I definitely believe that's true. It can also be a primary indicator of an unmet need, Libra, right? An unexpressed desire, or the suppression of some, Capricorn, the suppression of some core aspect of ourselves, or the presence of a vulnerability, Cancer, right? So the anger on all levels is pointing to some aspect of the cardinal cross, but what I've done with it is what causes harm. And that's the place where I'm totally responsible for the correction of that, for learning how to be emotionally regulated, for learning how to express my needs or share the peace that the anger brings up in me, or for learning how to care for the vulnerability that anger is protecting, right? If we only meet the anger at the level that it arises, we will never get the gift that the anger is giving. And that water trine Verena is speaking to, it, the other leg of that water trine is Ceres, the mother goddess in Scorpio. So I think pointing to what is the most deep and fundamental Scorpio attachment that we have, what it is to the mother, it is to the original source of life itself. And mothering is not an easy task, nor is it one that everyone has a healthy, like, we can think of mother as the Cancer, oh, I'm nourished and protected, but mother is often the one who can bring abuse or actually rejection, or lack of care, lack of nourishment. And that is often a source of immense healing for people to be able to connect with what was missing. I recently heard a friend honestly state that she's giving her child this beautiful life filled with safety and joy and all the things a little girl would ever want. And that what she found inside of her own experience is that her inner child felt angry and resentful. That why did she not have a safe childhood? Why did she not experience what her child is getting from her, because she's wanting to give this? But she had to meet the honest resentment inside of herself that was present there. Otherwise, that would be suppressing something so deep and internal, such a vulnerability within her own being and her relationship to motherhood. And hearing her say that, honestly, had the most profound effect on me, to really recognize that, like, these times are inviting us to face all aspects. The water trine is such a beautiful thing because it can be a very helpful way in to feeling the hurt, to feeling the fear, the rejection, and to making it sacred. That would be the Vesta leg of it, to making our devotion and our spiritual practice the anchor through which we extend sacredness to the most hurt and rejected parts of ourselves, to the deepest parts that need healing that aren't healed. Like, we don't need healing because we're healed. If we were healed, we would know ourselves. And that, I think, is a part of what's coming out of this season, is that we get to come to know ourselves as healed. We come to get to feel the parts of ourselves that maybe feel anger first and wonder what is really underneath this. And I swear by all, that is divine, I want to understand. I want to get these lessons. I'm one of these people with like core responsibility built into my nodal square. I feel responsible to complete the evolutionary cycle. I feel a sense of duty and responsibility in my family lineage, in my relationships, in who I am and how I'm showing up in the world. And there's like, immense pressure then because of that responsibility that I would be remiss if I don't name that. That's like always motivating me in the work that I do and what I'm learning and how I'm evolving. But I think that these times kind of call us each that self-sovereignty piece. I've been really thinking about this a lot lately. How do I claim total responsibility for my experience so that I become not the victim or the martyr or, right, that's that Virgo Pisces axis, but the recipient of the lesson, of the blessing, of the gift, of, so that I can close this whole cycle and put it in the rear view, and be able to move on. Like, I think that's a lot of what's being invited in these eclipses.
Thank you. Yes, that's beautiful. I am mindful that we are close to time, so I want to hand it back over to Martha and see if you have any closing remarks, Martha.
Yeah, I just want to say again, thank you all for being here live and for watching the recording. And I want to name, before we do a closing prayer, I want to name what each of us has coming up that we're offering, because we all, I think, at least 4 of us I know have things coming up, in case anybody is interested or feeling called to connect directly. I think all 5 of us do readings, correct? Yes. And so I put all of our contact information in the chat, and then I'll be putting it, those of you watching the recording, I'll be putting it with the recording. We all would certainly love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channels, and Jonathan has a wonderful podcast, etc. Right? But specifically coming up, I know that Verena has a transits course. I know that Michelle, you have a course happening this Friday, plus Jordyn and Michelle are both going to be part of the first ever evolutionary astrology conference, which the links will all be with this recording. Jonathan, is there something specific that you have coming up other than readings?
Yes, I haven't announced it yet, so this is the first place you hear it, but I'm planning to share a course in about Mars. So yeah, if anyone would be interested, you can find me in all the places. If you subscribe to my newsletter or follow me on my podcast, I'll be sharing more about it.
Beautiful. Yeah. And then I have a workshop coming up this weekend on the Shiva Shakti asteroids. And then I have a Eclipse workshop coming up next month with Chris Skidmore. It'll be really, really beautiful. And I have an astrology course that I'm starting next February. It's a year-long course, and many of you are already signed up. And all of that information is on my stuff, and all of us can be found at our links. Yeah. Any last word before we go to a closing prayer?
I was just going to say about my Eclipse class on Friday. It's a practice class. So if you've never practiced with me before, I'm doing a transmission on the eclipses themselves, and then I'm demonstrating the application of the eclipse in live participants' natal charts. So it allows, especially if you're a student of astrology, but you don't need to necessarily be studying astrology to get benefit from the transmission and the class itself. But if there's something in your own natal chart that you want to work with, it's where I do that in a held container of practice.
Beautiful. All right. So I could do a closing prayer, or Jonathan, or either way, all of the above. Me.
Go for it, Martha.
All right. Okay. So yeah, I just want to name before we do that. Again, my intention with this entire time together is that this is really about coming back into a sense of grounding, a sense of being centered and aligned with the reality that we are the divine itself, we are source itself. And so we can take a deep breath and come into our bodies, our beings, feel that light of the heart of Mother Gaia, Earth, filling her body, which includes our bodies. You can feel the light of our own hearts, our own beings, filling our bodies and our beings. You can feel the light of the heart of Source itself, surrounding us, filling us, mixing with the light of the heart of the earth, the light of the heart of our own beings, all as one. Take another deep breath and release anything and everything that maybe even felt good in the moment, but isn't in complete, total, radical alignment of the highest good for you in this moment. You just release it all back to Source. And taking another deep breath, anything and everything that is in complete, total, radical, highest good, complete alignment with you, your being, and the all that is. Just let that all settle in, nourish you, nurture you, hold you. And help you feel completely, totally, radically grounded, one as Earth, one as each other, one as the cosmos, all cosmic beings, one as the divine, one as Source itself. And we can send any and all healing, goodness of this time together to each other, to the all that is throughout all of time, all of space, and beyond. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you.
And
Thank
one
you.
last word, all of these people were part of the Rebecoming the One symposium. So actually, I interviewed, Jonathan interviewed me. There's lots and lots there. If any of you are not familiar with Rebecoming the One, there's so many amazing interviews there with Jonathan on Mercury in the Rebecoming the One last year, Jordyn, an interview on Lilith, Verena and Michelle, both interviews on Venus. So many things we touched on today are, touched on even more, and lots of stuff out there. So, thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Mhm.
Mm.